All right, Paul. So, welcome to the Mind vs. Muscle podcast. I'm really excited to have you here. Why don't you kind of just give yourself a little intro? I obviously know a lot about you, and Theo does too. So, give the people a little bit more info about who Paul is.
Well, for the people that are interested in your podcast that are, involved in the fitness industry and trying to better themselves, my history with training began in about 1991 or 92, which is going to sound really long time ago when I was in high school. And so I've always been kind of obsessed with the gym and, adding muscle and being lean and the whole nine. But then in 2007, I watched a video series about a guy named Lane Norton, and it's called Life of a Natural Pro on Bodybuilding.com. And before that, I had never considered competing because I'd never wanted to really do steroids, and I thought that was kind of what the sport was about. And he introduced the world to, at least to a lot of us, the world of natural bodybuilding. And so I reached out to Lane, ended up working with him, competing a couple times. I had some success. I was able to earn a pro card. And Lane and I actually became very good friends. He ended up moving to Florida where I lived. And after several years of prodding, he got me into coaching. And it got to the point where I actually got back into school and made coaching and online coaching and nutrition and training and all things philosophy that are related to that. My whole life, I was able to quit my job and do this full time, so I'm very blessed in that regard. But yeah, I guess I'm just a part of the movement of online coaching and natural bodybuilding. But I just consider myself a fan of the sport and a student of the lifestyle.
Okay, very cool. So, I know exactly what movie you're talking about with Lane and everything. I actually didn't know that he's what got you into the sport. Because from an outside perspective, I can tell you guys are actually really good friends now. So I was unaware that he was kind of your coach before the friendship even happened.
Yeah, it was weird because, at the time, I mean, in 2006, 2007, you got to understand, you might not remember that time, but we got our information from magazines. So message boards and instant messenger and these things that started coming out, it didn't really occur to me to go look online for things I was interested in. And I remember one day at work, I just typed in bodybuilding on the Google and just see what came up, and bodybuilding.com came up. And, I eventually found that video series, and I emailed Lane when that video series came out, and this was well before his meteoric rise to, kind of nutrition coach stardom. And he replied to me right then, and we struck up a conversation. I said, hey, I'm considering competing next year. What should I do? And he gave me the whole nine. Let's start with the building phase, and he looked at my pictures, and back then online coaching wasn't a thing. Everyone thought I was kind of crazy. All the people that were around me thought I should be working with the local guy in the gym who was the guru. But I just felt like Lane was saying the things that I wanted to hear in his video series.
Right, and I think it's safe to say he's kind of the guy that built the foundation for online coaching, essentially. He was one of the pioneers.
Yes. Yeah, I'll say this. Like, Dr. Joe was the first, but I think Lane was the trailblazer, because Dr. Joe isn't by nature a social media, building his own brand type person. He was one of the grassroots guys, if not the grassroots guy, for flexible dieting and kind of an evidence-based approach. But Lane was the one going on the internet and arguing with people and explaining and bashing people over the head with his beliefs because he thought it would better the sport. And, thank God he did, because he's dragged us forward a lot faster than we've gotten here. We would have gotten here, I think, but he really took the brunt of it. And, he catches a lot of hate for that, but, he's a man of his, beliefs, and he's really done great things from my perspective for the sport.
Absolutely. I'm a big follower of his. So let's go back a little bit. Talk about your transformation. I saw you do a post pretty recently, and it's safe to say you grew up a pretty skinny guy, and this is cool because Theo was always the same way. Theo was actually a client of mine a way back, and he came to me, and he was the same way. He grew up really, really skinny, so always had struggles putting on size, and now he's a fairly big dude. So you guys have a very similar story, and I actually think you guys both played basketball as well. So why don't you kind of give us the story behind being the skinny guy and what that was like? Because we see a lot of people that come to us with fat loss, and it's a self-confidence issue and a self-esteem issue where people are really afraid to get out there and be confident and have good energy, but it's usually the opposite spectrum of you. Most people look at skinny guys and they're like, man, I wish I could eat whatever I want, right? And I don't think people realize that it really is the same struggle as far as self-confidence and being able to be that bigger dude. It's just on the opposite spectrum. So why don't you kind of give us your feedback and your story upon the transformation you made from the beginning, and then obviously when you met Lane and started going a little more in depth with the bodybuilding side.
Yeah, I think early on, I was always very, very lanky and skinny, and I think it could have affected me more if I wasn't, I don't want to be too confident here, but I was very good at sports. I was very athletic as a kid, and I'm still very athletic. I could dunk a basketball in high school. I threw 90 miles an hour. I actually played college baseball on scholarship. So I think even though I was very insecure with my weight and people picked on me, it always I brushed it off as whatever, like I'm doing these things with my life. I'm happy with it. But I do think it always stuck with me, and the desire to put on more muscle. Growing up, I remember seeing pictures of people like Bo Jackson and, of course, Arnold Schwarzenegger and, the great athletes and always admiring that. And so when I started the process of lifting weights, I noticed an immediate change in my physique. I would get feedback from people like, oh, you've been working out. And so it kind of just started building this momentum. And when my baseball career ended after college, I decided not to pursue chasing that dream. Then bodybuilding and lifting weights became my priority. It was my outlet for all those years of athletic, putting your heart and soul into something for more than 10 years, like I did with baseball. When you take that away, the gym became my savior. I became, I was there every day. I loved it. And I did the wrong things for years. I obviously didn't train optimally, didn't eat optimally, but the fact is I was just so consistent. But when I found Lane, it started to provide that impetus to go from stuck in that intermediate phase to where I was, okay, now I wasn't afraid to train with more frequency. I learned how to pay attention to my nutrition. I didn't fear food anymore. Again, when we go back to these magazines and things you read, I still have all the magazines that I've ever bought, and I look at the articles and laugh, like the things that they preached were, pretty ridiculous if you weren't a genetically elite bodybuilder taking a lot of steroids.
Yeah.
So Lane just introduced that evidence-based approach of consistency, simplicity, not being afraid of overtraining. That's another thing that was a big common thing in all the magazines. Don't overtrain. One body part, one day a week.
Right.
And when I found Lane, it was almost like starting over again. That first 6 months or a year in the gym, well, I found that again when I was 30 because of Lane, and I started making progress again, like I was new in the sport, and it kind of reinvigorated me. And even though I'd been in the gym 10 years already, it really took me to that next level.
Okay, so when did you officially start your coaching then? Because you said you didn't meet and start working with Lane until you were 30, and are you still fairly new? I know you've been in the coaching game for at least several years, correct?
Yeah, I've been full-time coaching for 3 years now. I've been coaching in a capacity for 5 years.
Okay.
Which doesn't sound like that long, but when you consider how long online coaches have been prevalent, that's pretty much longer than anybody other than like people like Lane. And, even back when I started, the message boards were a who's who of the fitness industry now. Like my friends were like Alberto Nunez. Like that's who we used to talk to on the message board was Alberto, and of course Lane, and people like Tommy Jeffers, and the people that have come out and done such great things in this industry, Ben Esgro. These are all names of people on the message boards. So yeah, it's been 3 years full time and 5 years overall, and it was with a lot of hesitancy when Lane was getting more client requests, and he struggled with the amount of bad coaching that was going on, and he wanted more resources because he couldn't take on all the clients that he was getting requests from.
Okay, I see. So you would say he's probably a big influence of your coaching, essentially.
Yeah, basically what I did was, when I started coaching, it was at Lane's request, and I felt I had to uphold the standard that he was putting out there.
Right.
At the time, and still pretty prevalent, you hear about coaches that don't answer emails for days or weeks at a time, that are unresponsive, that send out cookie cutter plans, that basically treat clients like a flock of sheep. And the thing about Lane was that every client was replied to in a quick fashion, in a complete fashion, and all the programs were developed specifically based around that person's unique information. And so I've just applied that same thing. And, if you have a good service and you do well, and you're going to flourish. I mean, my business has grown through word of mouth, through, client referrals, through, the best thing I can ever get is when I work with a client and then I sign up his sister, and then I sign up his brother, and then I sign up his mom,
Right.
which happens quite frequently. So that's how you grow a business, is by providing greater value than anybody else out there. So yeah, Lane, what I felt Lane was doing then, I've tried to take that and to continue moving forward with it.
Right. So for me personally, I'm kind of on the opposite spectrum as far as I was actually kind of a chubbier kid growing up. Then I got really into soccer, had some actually serious injuries at the end of high school, and then got even heavier. But I think the similarity is what really, people always ask me, like, what got me into the industry? Why do I write so much? Why do I coach online? I coach in a gym. I do all these things. And for me, it was because I made a transformation, right? I know what the gym did for me, and that's what built that passion. And I think the best coaches kind of share that exact same philosophy, where the whole reason they do it is because they fell in love with themselves, right? One thing that I noticed is, like, I know for me personally, I surrounded myself with a really high-level coach, and it was just kind of contagious to me to want to do more and do the same thing he did. And like you said, he held himself at such a high standard with his business, his career, everything like that, that I felt the need to do it as well, because when he couldn't see clients anymore, because he does like the business side of everything now, I was kind of the right-hand guy that was able to take on those clients. So it sounds really similar. So the reason I ask is there any other people in your life that you found that were extremely influential? Because there's always that saying, like, the 5 people that surround you are probably going to dictate who you become, how you act, how your career ends up, all those things. Was there a tactic behind that, or did you just somehow surround yourself with great people?
There's definitely never a tactic, but I do agree that the people you surround yourself with is going to influence the person you are. But I don't think you can say, oh, I'm going to go hang around Lane Norton, or I'm going to go hang around this person and improve myself. The reason I got to hang out with Lane Norton was because I stepped outside my comfort zone. I reached out to him. I worked with him. I met him at an expo. We had a lot in common. He moved to Tampa. And so if any of those factors had not been in place, we would not have become as close. If I was a shitty client, or I didn't put my heart and soul into this, or if I didn't ask him the right questions, or if he didn't feel I was going to be good at coaching, if he saw that I had the same passion that he did. We did some videos together for Simply Shredded. We kind of built this rapport, and then through that, we got to spend time together. It wasn't a situation where I, consciously thought, oh, I need to spend time with Lane if I want to live that life. I had no desire to coach. I had no desire. I loved my career. I was in IT. I had been doing it for a decade, doing very well. My career was on the upward path, and I loved what I was doing. So there was never a conscious decision to quit that job to coach. The reason I quit that job to coach was more because just how much I enjoyed coaching. As much as I liked IT, I loved the coaching and the fitness part of it much better. And so I actually excelled at it greater. I put more effort into it.
Right.
I would, nights and weekends and free time were all into fitness. And so, that there's that thing about, if you work a 9-to-5 job, you're never really going to get ahead. You're going to work 9 to 5. If it's truly a career, you do it in your spare time. You do it with every breath you take. There's something going on with that. And when you finally find your passion, like with me, with the fitness world, even though I had been involved in it, it never really occurred to me that it was a career or an option.
Yep.
And so being around Lane kind of allowed that to happen. But absolutely. But I think as you hold yourself to a higher standard, you'll find the people you spend time with are people of that caliber. So,
Right.
I used to play a lot of softball on the weekends. I used to play in volleyball leagues. I used to play in baseball. I used to always be doing these leagues, and we'd go out drinking after. But when I started getting into bodybuilding and competing and going to expos, those kind of friendships that are based around drinking and extracurricular activities that are, while they're fun and they're great, they're not improving my life quality at all.
Yep.
And so if you're constantly looking to improve yourself, you're going to find that you're working your way into a different level of friendships and, surrounding yourself with people that are like-minded.
Absolutely. So do you think that there was a specific turning point? Was there a point where you started just marketing yourself more? You started going to more shows? What was that point where you were like, was there a point where you were getting full, or you had so many client applications that you were like, man, I really can take this full on? Or was there a point where you were like, I just need to make the switch and then turn the hustle on a little bit harder on the online coaching and then start marketing and really attacking it?
Yeah, so I've never really marketed myself as an online coach. I've had the fortune of being associated with Lane, and he got so many client requests. I basically, for the first 2 years, just made a living with online coaching from those client requests. When I finally made the switch was, after a couple of years of doing it, and then when I started making more money with my online coaching than I was with my career, that's when it kind of occurred to me, and I talked to my wife, and I said, there's something here. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm very pessimistic when it comes. I've always been I've always had a job, since I was 15, and I've always been like that. Go to work, get a paycheck, be secure type of guy.
Right.
Owning my own business is very scary, and so even when I was out earning my job, I still would be like, no, that's not going to happen next month. That was a 1 month fluke, right? Yeah. And there was a trend where it was going up every month, more clients, more, and it still didn't occur to me like this should be a thing. What actually happened was my wife, who is herself, one of the hardest working people I've ever met, and very driven and very motivated, and that's, part of the reason I married her, was working for Chase. And she was getting up into the executive level. She had gotten promoted to branch manager, and then what happened was she got promoted to a regional manager. The thing was, she had to move to make that job happen. So we lived in Orlando at the time. She had to move to Jacksonville to take this position. Well, it was a big pay increase. And so we had the opportunity for me to leave my job, her to take this pay increase, move to Jacksonville, basically, keep our income roughly the same. And then if my online business kept doing the same, we would be in a great position. So it was kind of a leap of faith at that time. And so when I decided to make that leap of faith, I did exactly what you're talking about. I said, what should I do? And I'll never forget, Lane called me and said, hey, my wife is pregnant, and she's not going to go to the Olympia with me this year. Do you want to go? I've got all the passes. I've got all the stuff, the room. Fly out there and just hang out with me. Well, at that Olympia, walking around with Lane Norton, when he was, probably at his peak. I mean, that's when he was announcing the Olympia. I don't know if you remember those years, but he was actually. So when I would walk around with Lane and shake people's hands and get to know them, and I met, the owners of this company and that company and the, people for the IFBB, and he was giving me passes to go, like, the VIP section and backstage, because, his wife would usually take on that role. What happened was when I got home, I got inundated with, hey, I met you at the Olympia. Hey, I met you at the Olympia. It was like, I don't want to call it a coming out party, but it was like people that were wanting to work with Lane or wanting to know more about Lane and realized he was too full, had a person that they could reach out to.
Right.
And I had recently quit my job. I was living with my wife in Jacksonville, didn't have anything to do but lift weights. And so I was basically just working around the clock at that point. And that's when I started to say, this can be a thing. I just noticed a big change, because I went from a guy who did some online coaching but had another career to a coach. So that perception is very powerful.
Absolutely. I think association is such a big thing. Just the fact that, like you said, people can look at you and know that Lane trusts you, and that says a lot to a lot of people that trust Lane, right? So association is a big thing. You say you don't do much marketing. That's actually something I wanted to ask you about, because I follow a lot of your stuff, and I noticed that you actually don't do much marketing. And one thing that I've noticed as my whole growth of my online coaching, which I've only been doing that for about a year, but I've been writing a blog for 6 years now. And I always tell people, like, the reason it's grown to what it's grown is because I write blogs every single week. I write statuses on Instagram and Facebook every week. I try to film videos. Once I started diving into Facebook advertisement and stuff like that, I was actually really disappointed with the return of investment because I really didn't get much clients from that, if any. Yet I kept getting clients from my blogs and my links through my Instagram and stuff like that. So I was wondering if you kind of have the same, I guess not tactic, but strategy behind it, because you put out a lot of content. For example, you did a YouTube video every day for a good, I think it was even just a week because you had so many Q&As, but then it's kind of trickled along, and I've noticed you've been putting out a lot more content, which I've been loving, by the way. Really, really good strategy because it's just so consistent. So I've found myself going to, because you're a coach that I look up to for advice, I've found myself going just to check your YouTube every day to see when the next video has came up, right? Is that kind of how you've essentially marketed yourself, but just really just putting out content or making appearances at places? Like what was your big aha moment with that?
So I have a couple different things. The first is, as a coach, it's very important to not be known as an online coach. Like, even though my coaching is online, I still try to attend as many of my client shows as possible, be a part of their journey. That really helps, because when people see you at a client's show and you put that out there, then people know that they're getting a real coach.
Right.
So whether it's through my clients who have big followings that talk about me, or Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, it's all very powerful. But when I say I don't market, I guess that's kind of false, because I do market. But I believe what you just exposed is that it's all about content and being a content provider. So the person that has influenced me the most in that regard is Gary Vaynerchuk, who is a very vocal, very outspoken person about the power of building your own brand. And when I started watching his videos and he discussed it, I found I had a lot of predisposition to be not a YouTuber, or not going to use Snapchat, or Snapchat is only for kids, or Instagram is only for, you kind of have these things built up. And what I really learned was the value of building my own brand, being my own brand. Like you said, the consistency, putting out information. Getting to this place took me years. I couldn't have made these videos a few years ago. I wouldn't have been confident enough to do them. It's taken me working with, over 1,000 clients and being involved in so many seminars and going to school and feeling comfortable giving out information, because it has to be confident. It has to be authentic. So my videos, while I'm providing you information, it's also authentic to what I tell my clients. And so they actually started as a value add for my clients. I have a page for my clients, and they would ask questions. And so I would answer the questions. And it occurred to me one day, if my clients have these questions, because sometimes they seem to come in ebbs and flows. A lot of people ask the same questions, and I'm sure it's because somebody puts out some content and a lot of people hear it, or a story comes out on the news. And so what I thought was, if my clients have these questions, I can kill two birds with one stone. I can put out a video that addresses their concerns, and I can also put out a video that addresses the concerns of fitness populace that may also be having this and don't have the luxury of a coach. And it also acts a bit as a diary for me, or something like if I have a client that says, "Hey coach, how do you squat?" Well, I happen to have a squat tutorial video that I did with Danny Bove, who has a master's degree in kinesiology and biomechanics. So I have these at my disposal. So now what I'm doing is I'm actually trying to build a value add for people that associate with me, that are my clients and friends and want to be involved, like you said, watching my videos on a regular basis. So I'm trying to build up kind of not a legacy, but just a library of things that I've done and said, so that I can refer to that if someone asks the same question over and over,
Yeah. It's working, man. It's working. I couldn't agree more with Gary Vee. Is one of my big go-tos for following. Me and Theo are both big proponents of him. My boss actually had the chance to go visit him in New York and stuff, and said it was an unbelievable experience. So I can't even imagine having a conversation with that guy, to be honest with you, but it would be great. So let's kind of switch gears and talk more about like training and nutrition and stuff like that. We have a lot of mixed listeners. We have a lot of trainers that actually listen to our podcast, but we also have a lot of clients that are either more lifestyle oriented who really just want to build some muscle, lose some body fat, and just feel better. So they don't have a strict timeline. It's more of just a lifestyle behind it. And then we have a lot of people that are more into the aesthetic side of things where they do want to either do a show or they want to achieve that physique of somebody that would be on a show. So I would like to know your kind of your approach to a more of a lifestyle client, because I'm assuming you have more bodybuilding physique clients, but I'm assuming you still do work with people that may hire you and say, I don't really want to do a show, but I want to lose X amount of weight and I want to keep that off for the next year because I'm really just trying to be leaner for life. What's your approach for a more lifestyle based client because there's not a time restricted deadline?
I'd love to give you the black and white, this is what's best for a lifestyle client, but ultimately what I'll do is I'll set up a time to speak with them. I give them a questionnaire, and what I want to know is what are their goals and what is the time frame that's realistic for them to reach those goals, and then how much time do they have to commit, right? So I have clients that can only train 3 days a week for an hour each session. And I have clients that can train 6-7 days a week or twice a day, or they're trainers themselves and they're in the gym all day. So my approach for a lifestyle client is to find what they enjoy. Do they want to be making gains as far as increasing their strength, or do they only care specifically about body composition? They don't care how strong they are. What motivates you and what motivates me is going to be different than what motivates Sally and Jack. So it's I say this all the time, but the psychology of the athlete is probably the most important thing about them. Knowing what gets them going. If someone reaches out to me and says, hey, I know you do this type of philosophy, but I like going to CrossFit twice a week. Can I do that? Hell yes, you can do CrossFit. If the CrossFit gets you excited to put on your tights and get in the gym and work out for 30 minutes, then do it. I'm all about building a program around a person's specific goals and what gets them motivated, and not holding them to some standard from the 1950s hardcore bodybuilder. You have to do deadlifts and you have to do barbell rows and you have to do all these movements that, while maybe effective, just aren't safe or aren't proper for this person. So I try to be very open-minded. I myself am open-minded. I've tried various things. Although I've never done CrossFit, I have clients that do it and love it. So for me, I can't really tell you what specifically I would do for that person, but I would try to optimize every second that I have with them with their nutrition and training for that lifestyle purpose.
Okay. So a lot of what I got out of that is something we keep preaching on the podcast too, is that adherence is probably the most important thing. Right?
Very important.
So whatever you were trying to do right there with them is anything that you could possibly do to help them stay adherent to some kind of training and nutrition plan, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about cardio. A question that I got recently is talking about adding in and taking out cardio. I work with some people that are doing bikini shows and bodybuilding shows, stuff like that, and it's a little bit easier to set them up on a cardio plan and then kind of explain the whole point of after the show, the goal is to reverse out of most of that cardio. But for a lifestyle client, their question after hearing me talk about this on the podcast was kind of like, how do you go about that if you don't really have a deadline? Like, I want to add in cardio to lose weight, and I'm not necessarily in a hurry, but I want to see it fall off. How do you go about setting up a cardio program with somebody who is in more of a lifestyle situation where they just want to lose fat? Is there a specific strategy or amount of specific time that you try to stay away from getting to? Do you plan on adding a lot in to get them to the result and then just weaning it off? How do you go about that?
Yeah, it's a great question. It comes down to adherence. As you said, I'll actually ask people, okay, we've hit a sticking point, or at this point, we need to create a greater caloric deficit to keep fat loss going. What sounds worse to you, cardio or less calories? And some people love cardio. Some people are cardio junkies. Some people would rather eat dirt and do no cardio. So it all comes down to, with a lifestyle client specifically, is adherence, consistency, what they look forward to, and adjusting based on that. Now, there's going to come a time when they want to get, depending on how lean they want to get, it's going to get uncomfortable and it's going to get tough. And that's where we can start to look at different types of cardio, different intensities, getting more aggressive with multiple cardio sessions per day if necessary. But for the lifestyle client, I find that to be pretty rare unless they're planning to do a photo shoot or, when you start to get to sub 8-7% body fat, that's when you have to start playing with those variables for the most part. If I have to get somebody doing more than 30-40 minutes of cardio 5 or 6 days a week and it's a lifestyle client, I think then it's time to start looking at, okay, what's a reasonable expectation for where your current metabolic rate is and how lean we're going to get.
Okay, so that kind of leads into my next question, actually, so we can jump right to that. Avoiding hormonal down regulation when you are dieting or adding cardio. You did a video that really sparked this question to come up, and it talked about the metabolism over the long run and it falling down and trying to bring it back up and repairing it essentially, because we know there's all this talk about metabolic damage and how it's not really metabolic damage, but it's metabolic adaptation and so on and so forth. How do you go about avoiding that in general? Or I think it's safe to say, and most people listening to this podcast will understand, that if you're going to do a show, you got to kind of expect a little bit of that to happen, and that's just part of it. Now, you can repair it over months and months afterwards and try to bring that back up slowly, but you have to be ready for that journey. Now, as far as somebody who has a year long with me and they just want to lose weight, and it could be 40 to 80 pounds, and they want to keep that off, how do you go about doing this big weight loss? Like, you had a transformation. I think the guy lost probably looked like over 100 pounds, and then he actually got on stage.
Yeah.
So someone like him, I'm assuming that's going to take quite a while, right? So that to me is somewhat of a lifestyle transformation. How do you go about avoiding the down regulation of metabolism, sex hormones, all that?
The best thing to do is, set realistic expectations, because metabolic adaptations, hormonal changes, when you're talking about losing a lot of body fat, that is going to happen. That is your body's response to what you're doing. So with someone like Garrett, the guy you talked about, I did a video on how to lose 100 pounds. He came to me 2 years ago and he said he wanted to do a show, and he was over 300 pounds. And, based on where he was, a drug-free bodybuilder, 300 pounds, I told him his stage weight was going to be around 200. And so, he kind of probably thought that was low at the time. But, the one thing about having a little bit of experience, and I have a little bit of trust for people, he said, let's start and let's see where we get. So we got to about 230 after a year, and he was starting to look good, but he was still far from stage shape.
Right.
So when we got him down to 230, that's when things got rough. That's when the fat loss stalled. That's when the calories were low. The cardio was high. His motivation was low. His sex drive was low. All his things. We spent the next 6 months reverse dieting. That's the process you're talking about. The restoring the metabolic rates, the bringing the hormones back up, the allowing the body to just get back into a comfortable place. And during that time, his weight came up into the 240 range. And I actually had to have a heart-to-heart with him, and I said, hey, listen, if you want to do a bodybuilding show at the end of the year, we got to stop this weight gain. And, when I talked to him, he said, yeah, I've been not tracking. I'm dating someone now seriously, so we've been being a little more social. Well, that talk kind of sparked his rebirth. He actually signed up for my show, the Florida West Coast Classic in Tampa. It was on November 5th, or I got the flyer here. Yeah, it was on November 5th this year. So we had a good 20-plus weeks of diet, got him down to about 202, 203 for stage, and he looked absolutely phenomenal. For losing over 100 pounds, the little bit of loose skin that he had on his lower abdomen basically was almost non-noticeable. And that guy has just continued to impress me because he's reverse dieting now, and he's going to do my show again next year, because this year he did the show to do it. Next year he wants to do the show to win it. He's a big guy. I mean, 6 foot, 200 pound guy. He's a big dude.
Yeah.
So yeah, the biggest thing is just taking each individual situation and looking at it. Some people maintain a leaner physique on more calories, but no matter how blessed you are, it's going to suck if you're going to get truly stage lean. If you're going to go for that Brian Whitaker conditioning, you're going to have to embrace the suck at the end of prep. Hormones, don't even bother looking at them. Yeah. Sex drive, don't even wonder about it. Hunger, it's going to be through the roof. You're going to need high levels of caffeine just to get through your day. But that's the sport. Unless you're going to take drugs, that's the sport. And for those of us that decide to do this drug-free, we understand that. But we also, the good thing about understanding and putting the information out there is that we now know, I've got the Chris Foz study still written up on my board behind me there, the case study where he did his hormones for a full year, 6 months into prep, 6 months out of prep, and lo and behold, after 6 months coming out of prep, everything was back to normal.
Right.
So yeah, it's just about understanding that. And for God's sake, do not go to the doctor a week out from your show and get your blood drawn, because he's going to think you're ready to die.
Yeah, so something's really wrong. So going off of that, do you think that there's hormonally a difference between, because a big trend now as of probably the last couple years at least, has been a much longer prep, where I think back in the day it was pretty common to say, okay, we have 12 weeks, let's grind it like crazy until we get to that show, which is obviously not as sustainable, especially on the aftermath, because that's what led to so many binges and rebounds on weight gain. Is there a hormonal difference in dieting for 6 months versus 3, or is either way you losing that significant amount of weight gonna damage the hormones about the same? The only difference being that after 6 months, it's a little bit easier to keep that weight off versus rebounding and regaining a bunch.
Yeah, I believe the body responds better if you're much more gradual with it. Yes, your hormones are going to adjust, because fat cells are basically responsible for a lot of that. They're sending these signals out, and as they're dying, they're changing their signal, and your body is going, oh crap, we have less body fat, what do we need to do? So when you do a 12-week crash diet, that means you're just putting the pedal to the metal for 12 weeks. What tends to happen is you do a 12-week crash rebound, right? When you do a 6-month prep and it's just gradually getting you there, and then you can gradually get back, I think the body responds much better. My first prep was 16 weeks, and the last prep I did was 24 weeks. And the benefit I saw with the 24-week prep was that I just maintained my strength much better. I maintained more lean body mass. I was able to get leaner. I, as a coach now, plan in diet breaks. After spending some time with Eric Helms, we talked about some research that he's seen. And diet breaks have become a valuable part of contest prep. So when you're not rushing things, the problem with the 12-week prep, if you've got 25 pounds to lose, is you're going to be stressed out. You're going to be crushing the cardio on low calories. You're going to lose more muscle. And I think overall, it's just more jarring to your body. Whereas with the gradual prep, you are going to be able to allow your body to adapt and not be forcing it to adapt.
Right. I like what you said about, I actually just had recently, so I've been working with Jeff Nippert. I have a photo shoot coming up sometime in February, and he's been kind of preparing me for that. And one of the things he had me do probably about a month or so ago was a diet break. And it was one of those things where I was like, shit, I don't want to bump my calories up that much. It kind of scared me a little bit. And the funny thing is I probably gained a few pounds throughout the week, and then it dropped immediately. And then the weeks following that, I actually saw really good results, and I felt so much better afterwards. So I think for people out there that are interested in diet breaks, I actually wrote a full blog on it after I got done with the experience.
Awesome.
I think it's very, very powerful for the longevity of things and just keeping your hormones safe and actually just feeling better. And you have a great week in the gym when you do it as well.
Yep. I taper cardio. I bring the calories up. And I get the same response that you're talking about. It's very much about fear. Some people are afraid of refeed. Some people have just been so guilted by eating anything other than like poverty macros that they're so afraid of it that, the process of doing a whole week at that freaks them out. But again, it comes down to, like with Jeff, obviously the guy's got a freaky physique. He really knows his stuff. So you're going, all right, I trust this guy because obviously he's put in the research, he's done the work himself, he's worked with people in the past, so he has the experience. And that's where, as a coach, the benefit of being considered a good coach, people are going to trust the process a little bit more.
Right.
And so with someone like Jeff, obviously you said, this is what I need to do. This guy knows his stuff.
Yeah.
There's, that's the great thing about nutrition, and we're still learning what works, what doesn't work. We're still examining things. We're not stuck in the dogmatic approach of the 80s anymore, where people just ate 5 basic foods for 12 weeks and binged after and put on more body fat than they had before.
Yeah. So keeping on the trail of like the 6 month versus 3 month, Mike Israetel had a good video about, I believe it was kind of about body fat reset point, like so resetting your body fat set levels. One of the things he talked about is what he likes to do with clients is diet for 2 to 4 months, I think it was, and then actually take a maintenance phase and even if you're still doing a little cardio, just bring calories up and just not try to lose so much weight for a good 1 to 2 months and then go back to it. So would you rather have somebody, instead of shooting for 6 months, shoot for a year and do that kind of path where they're dieting and then actually taking a little bit of a break with you for a month or two and then going back to it? And do you think that has an effect of being able to maintain that fat loss in the long run?
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason I would think that that's a very good approach, and that's something I actually do, is I'll set a weight loss goal. If someone has 80 pounds to lose, we're not going to lose that in one shot. So I'll actually do a period of, let's get to this goal weight. Let's lose 20 pounds. Let's lose 15 pounds. Let's spend some time reverse dieting, which is going to look a lot like what he calls the maintenance phase. The difference is, I mean, in my opinion, with the reverse diet, I'm going to try to gradually walk calories up as long as we're maintaining weight and things are going good. But you get into that phase where, okay, you're actually going to perform better in the gym. You're going to likely add some lean body mass. Your motivation is going to go up. And so you're going through this, instead of just being beaten down for 12 months straight, you're actually able to maintain and then drop, maintain and then drop. And that's when we're talking about lifestyle clients like you are, that's how you get to a big sustained weight loss and then be able to maintain it. We don't want to do Biggest Loser style and lose like 18 pounds a week, 10 pounds a week. Realistically, 1 to 1.5, maybe 2% per week if we're someone that's, you know, closer to the overweight, obese category. But for general pop, mostly healthy, a little bit overweight, 1% per week is what you want to shoot for.
Cool. Very cool. Do you want to give the listeners like your definition of flexible dieting? I get talked about this a lot because I'm a big proponent of it. And I think a lot of the people that I see, and you probably experience this too, get confused because I say I'm a big proponent of it, but if you go on my Instagram or Facebook, you never see me posting pictures of ice cream and drinking a bunch of beer or wine or anything. And I do fit those things in here and there. But I think people get it twisted because they see these people on Instagram that are ripped out of their minds eating In-N-Out burgers every other day, or they just have 80 pictures of that one time they ate it and they scatter them across their timeline.
Yeah.
But I've talked about my definition of it. I'd love to hear yours so the listener can kind of see like multiple perspectives of what flexible dieting actually should be.
So here's the cool thing about the term flexible dieting for me is that it's got a couple different meanings. In terms of hitting your macronutrient goals for the day, for me, that means that it's an exchange system. So flexible meaning you don't have to eat chicken, you don't have to eat turkey, you don't have to have whey protein, you don't have to have tuna, you don't have to have something you don't like. You can exchange it. So there is a good exchange for rice. There's a potato. There's a good exchange for chicken. There's turkey. There's a good exchange for peanut butter, right? Fats. Any food you eat, there's an exchange for it. What I think you're referring to is it's almost like two sects now, flexible dieting and IIFYM, if it fits your macros. And so if we're talking about Gen Pop people, the lifestyle people you're talking about, I'm fine with them using an IIFYM approach if they're hitting their daily goals. If we're talking about elite athletes, pro natural bodybuilders, pro bikini competitors, you know, the type of athletes that I work with, then when I talk to them about flexible dieting, it's, all right, maybe we're having too much broccoli. Maybe it's slowing down your digestion. Let's switch to a different vegetable. It's not, let's include a Pop-Tart every day. Because when you get to the elite level, calories get low. You and I know satiety matters, volume matters, micronutrients matter. So I don't want to, I made a video about hating on IIFYM. I actually don't hate it. I just hate the proliferation of information that you're talking about where it's, oh, this person gets shredded and they only ate this. No, that person eats 42 meals a week of chicken and rice and broccoli. And then once a week, they fit in a burger and fries, but that's the only thing they show you.
Yeah.
Right? 100%. The other definition of flexible dieting is if I don't hit my daily goals, if I go over or under, I can be flexible the next day and go over or under to balance out a 2-day, a 3-day, or 4-day period. With the holidays coming up, I like to talk about banking your calories. If I know I'm going to go to my mom's and she's going to make some Paula Deen recipes that are crazy high in fat and sugar and carbs, I'll bank 10, 15 grams of fat and 30, 40 grams of carbs a day for a week and go in with 500 carbs and 150 grams of fat that I haven't eaten all week and I can't wait, right? So that's what flexibility too means. It doesn't just mean the food choices to me. It also means the ability to be flexible on a day-to-day basis.
Right, 100%. Now, do you have like a recommendation for clients as far as, obviously when you get closer to stage, it's pretty important to be more accurate to those numbers, but let's say your goal is to hit 200 grams of protein. Do you have a flexibility of saying 5 to 10 grams on carbs, fats, and protein, or 2 to 3 grams on fat, just staying within your boundaries day to day, or are you pretty consistent about hitting those numbers?
100%. I agree. I tell my clients they are 100% compliant if they're within 10 grams on protein and carbs and 5 grams on fat, or they hit their same calorie goal for the day.
Okay.
Right? So they're a little over on carbs. Let's go a little under on protein, something like that. So as long as they're in the same calorie range for the day, within, like 40, 50 calories.
Right. And I do the same. And I think the reason I wanted to hear you say that as well is because I think people misinterpret it. And like you said, they only assume flexible dieting is about the food choice, and they forget that it can be flexible in other means as far as how many calories you're getting and stuff like that. And I actually do the same thing. I love that post you did about banking your calories, because I'm literally getting ready to do the same thing because I'm excited for everything my grandma's going to be cooking this weekend. So totally get it. Couple more questions before we get into the personality question and call it good. Last year I went to, and I think, are you going to be at the Physique Summit this year?
I haven't decided yet. That's like right in the middle of the summer. It's super busy with shows. Right. My friend and business partner Lauren Coleman is presenting there this year. I'm friends with John. I'm friends with Cliff. So it's going to be hard not to be there, but I can't commit to it just yet.
Right. So I went there last year. I just got my ticket for that this year. I'm actually pretty excited. And one of the things I've heard Cliff and then Jason Theobald talk about as well is nutrient timing. When a client hits a plateau, sometimes instead of them taking calories, taking carbs out of their diet, adding cardio, whatever, they'll actually just manipulate their timing and say, hey, I want you to put the majority of your carbs around your training, or I want you to eat most of your fat and protein meals separate from your fat and carb meals, and vice versa. Do you have any opinion on that? I know some people are completely against it, and it's as long as you hit your calories, you're good. Some people believe that is the next step, and why not do that instead of pulling calories if you can? I'd love to hear your opinion and how you go about that.
So the question being, calories equal, does timing matter? Is that what you're saying to me?
Yeah, kind of. Do you influence timing at all with your clients when they're kind of getting specific?
Yeah. So it's all about adherence and consistency. I find the people that are the most goal-driven, they want to win the IFBB Pro Card, they want to win the Natural Pro Card, they want to be a Natural Pro Champion, they are going to space their meals the way I suggest. So I do, based on the research and all my experiences, I do suggest spacing protein doses out 4 to 6 hours. I do suggest you get the bulk, 50 to 60% of your carbs pre and post workout. Now, that can depend. If you're working out at 5 a.m. in the morning, maybe you don't eat a huge meal before you work out, and you have a meal before bed that acts as your pre-workout meal type of thing. But I do have some guidelines that I do provide for people that are very concerned about body composition and performance. For other people that it's only about adherence and they work a crazy shift schedule and it's just about getting the calories in, I work with people that like to do intermittent fasting. I have no problem with that. I still believe they should not have more than 80 or 100 grams of protein in a meal, just because you can get more spikes to your muscle protein synthesis if you space it out throughout the day. But if that's the only way that they can adhere, then I'm fine with it. Yes. So I do believe there is some value in, the timing, especially as we get leaner and leaner.
Right. Very cool. Very cool. I totally agree. So one last question for you is actually a personality question. We like to do this at the end with people we interview. This is the story. You're on a plane and you're actually flying to Japan. So you got a long trip ahead of you. You're in the middle seat and you have 2 empty seats to the side of you. You can choose anyone to sit in those seats. They can be dead or alive, but they cannot be friends or family. Who would you choose?
They cannot be family.
Or friends.
Or friends.
Dead or alive.
I mean, definitely, this is The Rock. He's sitting right here. Huge fan of The Rock. And it's a flight to Japan. I might have to go with Gary Vaynerchuk, dude.
Yeah.
It might have to be The Rock and Gary Vaynerchuk, because I can't imagine I've learned so much from him just watching his videos and his Daily V and his question, Ask Gary V stuff. So, yeah. I think that those would be two really good choices. I don't think I would be wanting that plane to ever land.
I actually would love to sit next to both those guys. That would be an interesting conversation. Very good answer. So before we hang up, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you, your website, your YouTube, all that good stuff, so we can plug you a little bit.
Well, thank you for that. My website is prophysique.com. Pretty basic. It's old and outdated, but I'm working on developing some new stuff and some new products that are going to be built into the site. All my social media is at Paul Revelia. My last name is Revelia, so it's a little odd, but yeah. So my two favorite platforms are without a doubt YouTube and Instagram. I try to bounce things off both of those. I'm not much of a Twitterer. I do like to use Snapchat, but I don't do it every day. What I'll tend to do is if I'm going on a trip and I can't really document, I will actually do a lot of Snapchatting during the trips, like for nationals and for like expos, things where I don't actually have the time to do video content.
Right.
So those are my two main things. Facebook is, of course, I have a Facebook page for my business, for myself as an athlete, all that nonsense. So yeah, I think the good thing about my last name is that I'm the only one. So if you type in Revelia, you're going to find me. And then I think that's it. I mean, I'll obviously talk about Core Nutritionals, Doug Miller's company. I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yep.
Just it gives me great pride to not only be associated with it, but be involved in all that he's doing and moving forward with his business, with his distributors, with his stores. They're in Australia now. They're all over North America. His brand has grown completely organically. No advertising and muscle and fitness, and it's been so great to just see good products at a reasonable price, properly dosed, no proprietary blends. You know exactly what you're getting,
right?
And he's flourishing. So it's been great to be associated with that. And then finally, my bodybuilding show this November 11th, the OCB Florida West Coast Classic. It's a pro qualifier. Gave out 4 pro cards last year, and the show almost doubled in size. So I'm going all in this year. I am hoping to make this the crown jewel of natural bodybuilding in Florida within the next couple of years, and I've got nothing but good feedback, and I continue to just put all effort into the show. Every dollar that it makes goes back into the show the next year. It is purely a passion project for me. So if anyone's interested in being involved with a sponsorship for the show, with coming and competing at the show, email me, paul@prophysique.com, and we'll make it happen.
Awesome, man. Appreciate you being on the podcast, brother.
Well, it's from the first time I saw your name, I knew we were going to be friends. I think you commented on one of my posts or something. I said, no, that's a great name. And so I look forward to meeting you at either the Arnold or one of these events that we'll be at together in the near future.
Absolutely, man. Me too. Thank you so much.
And I'm sorry your partner couldn't be on the call. Poor Theo. Get rid of Comcast.
If you love the Mind vs. Muscle podcast, want more free content, and you want to support the movement, share this podcast and leave us a 5-star rating and review. To get your questions answered on the next episode, see the show notes for our social media handles and hashtag Mind vs. Muscle.